Hey there, it's JohnBerry555 and welcome to my full review of Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 7, The Clone Conspiracy, and Episode 8, Truth and Consequences. Timestamps will be down below for each individual episode, but in the meantime, I hope you enjoy my review, so let's begin with Episode 7, The Clone Conspiracy. So this was a thrilling and captivating episode. Now, there's actually a kind of a second part, because this is very similar to the Riot-Off episodes in season 1, where you have an episode that sets up what's going to be needed in episode 2, or the next part is going to be the one with the batch in it. This was a thrilling, captivating episode. We got political intrigue, we got return of some characters from the Clone Wars in season 1, both Clone Wars and season 1 of the Bad Batch, I should say. We got, of course, I think I mentioned the political intrigue, but all this is revolving around a conspiracy that certain Imperials are trying to cover up and certain clones weren't exposed to the Senate. Hey there, it's JohnBerry555 and welcome to my full review of Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 7, The Clone Conspiracy. So as I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, this was a thrilling and captivating episode, filled with political intrigue and the return of some characters. And speaking of characters, let's actually discuss which characters were returning. So we got the return of Senator Chuchi. She's the senator from the I think it was at least one episode, maybe if not two, from the Clone Wars, where they go to the visit the moon Pantora. She actually appears later on too, where she works with Ahsoka to uncover a conspiracy. But this is a totally different conspiracy she's now working to uncover. But it's definitely, you can tell that they were writing her, basically as a younger version of Senator Amidala. While I was preparing for this, I was like, I kind of wish she had expressed a line, or will maybe in the next episode, about wishing Senator Amidala was their Padme. Because it very much seems like she's in some ways fulfilling the same role that Padme did in many of the political episodes in the Clone Wars. But of course, her own twist on it, because let's be real, Padme, I think, was a much more seasoned politician. And you can tell Senator Chuchi, she's not as confident in these scenarios that Padme would be. Padme would be taking control, where she still probably put herself in some danger, but she would be taking control and dealing with it. You can tell Senator Chuchi, she's doing well, but you can tell she's not as experienced in this kind of stuff as Padme would have been. Granted, Padme has had a lot more experience, but when we first saw Senator Chuchi all the way back in the Clone Wars, she was a young, inexperienced senator, so that makes sense. We're building upon her characterization. You can tell she's grown, matured, and become more experienced from when we first saw her, but we can tell she's still not to the level of experience of other senators and politicians we've seen in Star Wars, namely Senator Amidala, but also Senator Organa, who also makes an appearance, basically giving her some encouragement off the Senate floor. You can definitely tell he's being careful what he's saying, because he doesn't want to reveal too much about what he's doing, but also wants her to continue pushing her, what she's trying to do, with, helping the clones out. Because let's be real, everything she's focused on in this episode is helping the clones, dealing with the clones and not just throwing them away. Fortunately, that's probably what's going to end up happening now in the Empire, but I have a feeling showing that the early seeds of rebellion are being planted in this episode. And of course, this episode is totally lacking of the Bad Batch and Inform. Even Crosshair doesn't appear, as Admiral Rampart trying to push his bill that will allow for civilian conscription of citizens rather than clones. But essentially, what Senator Chuchi is working to uncover is what happened to Camino. But that's only because she wanted to get the opinions of the clones of what they would like, the bills to include to help them when they can no longer be troopers, no longer be soldiers. One clone, Slip, reveals this stuff to her. Unfortunately, he and his friend are killed by a clone sniper who's not Crosshair in two separate instances. And Senator Chuchi was nearly killed by that clone sniper first, for Captain Rex didn't save her. And then they go to a lower level on Coruscant to interrogate this clone. It takes us a moment to figure out, is it a clone or is it not? But the scariest thing about this clone is he calls himself a true believer right before he kills himself. Yeah, that clone basically, not cyanide, it's something electric, but the same principle that you sometimes will see among true believers. And that's not the true thing, whether he's truly a true believer or his interpretership is still working, could go either way. Regardless, each of those are bad, because that's going to show that the clones are truly divided. We always knew they were going to be somewhat divided, but because they are individuals, but this is really showing how they can be divided, that they are clones willing to kill other clones to stop the to either advance to advance the empire. And take a note that Rex used his stun sight on his blaster to stop the clone sniper, but he probably did that mainly because he wanted to interrogate the clone. But also, if you connect that with the Bad Batch, although whenever they're facing clones, they're using those stun settings as well. I think that's partially because they know that some of those clones are not doing this freely. They're basically forced to do it. And I think, but this is a clone who will basically be willing to kill clones. We've seen him already kill 2 of them. And it's implied that other clones have been killed for questioning the Empire as well. That actually makes me a little more nervous about Cody, but here's hope that he successfully deserted the Empire. But that was in a different episode, so who knows, maybe it'll come back, maybe it won't. But I'm feeling the next episode, we'll see the Bad Batch, and they're going to help with all this, because remember, they also witnessed Rampart destroy Camino. So they're probably not going to testify in front of the Senate, because that would really be bad for the Empire. And we know the Empire is not stopped. Though I have a feeling we're going to get kind of a bittersweet ending, but happy in the short term. Survival. That's, I think, a lot of what we're going to be seeing in the Bad Batch. Kind of being set up with the previous episode, Tribe. It's all about survival. If you can survive, you've won. That's what I think they're setting up for the next episode. But, man, the question is, basically, will the Senate actually find out about what happened to Camino? I'm pretty sure Bail Organa will find out. There's no doubt about that. Well, there is some doubt, but I have a feeling he's going to be the one Senate who does find out. But it does make me wonder, will the rest of the Senate find out about it? Or will somehow the Empire twist it to maybe claiming there was a clone rebellion, or just a rebellion with the Camorans? Something to hide that the Empire is the one who destroyed Camino. But a few other things I would like to just take a note of in this episode. One, Master Mida and Rampart both fully know what happened to Camino, and both are fully intending to keep it from the Senate. And of course, the Empire is all in on this as well. Duh. But also, where Rex and Senator Chuchi interrogate that clone is okay. From the Ahsoka episodes of the last season of the Clone Wars, those two, Rafa and I forget her sister's name. That's the garage they interrogate that clone in. But nice little connection right there. Just kind of showing how a nascent rebel cell forming up, if you will. But that's all I have for you for this episode. So stay tuned for the next episode, which is going to be coming up very shortly. Probably, well, depends on if you're watching it in the compilation or not. So that's all I have for this episode of Star Wars: The Bad Batch. As I said earlier, this was a thrilling and captivating episode full of political intrigue. Stay tuned for the next episode. But in the meantime, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below, what did you think of this episode? I would love to hear from you. Now it's time to move on to discuss episode 8, Truth and Consequences. So this episode obviously is continuing the theming of the previous episode, political intrigue, and all that. It's another amazing, good episode. And just like with the Ryloff episode in season 1, it's an episode with the Bad Batch, and that's kind of spoilers, but that is important because it's the Bad Batch being confronted again with the reality of what's going on in the galaxy, and being a call to action for them, especially one member of the Bad Batch, actually a couple of members of the Bad Batch, but especially one in particular. That I'm going to focus on in my full review. But this episode really was an amazing, spectacular episode, and kind of like I was feeling, it was not going to be great for the clones. The Empire, with the Emperor, was going to be one step ahead of them this entire time. Hey there, it's JohnBerry555, and welcome to my full review of Star Wars: The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 8, Truth and Consequences. So this episode picks up exactly where the clone conspiracy leaves off. The Bad Batch are contacted by Rex, and they're tasked with retrieving the data that will prove that Admiral Rampart ordered the destruction of Camino. So the Bad Batch and Rex go sneak aboard Rampart's Star Destroyer, all that, have to fight some clones, and end up causing more damage to it. But that's a minor thing. Sure, they're fighting the Empire, really, and revealing the truth. But while all that's going on, Omega is getting a 101 on politics, because they make the right decision. Actually, Omega is the one who makes the decision that she's not going to go do that. So she volunteers to come and Senator Chuchi. And part of it is to keep Senator Chuchi safe. But this is also probably the safest place for Omega, except for she's in the halls of the the Senate, the Imperial Senate, and she literally is within like a meter, a yard basically, of Admiral Rampart at one point, and I'm like, does he recognize that she's a clone? Probably not. But she also gets to meet Bail Organa. And that's and actually then the Center for Camino, who's now been disgraced. Basically sounds like the Empire used Senator Bonteri. No, that's a different character. The Senator from Camino used her as probably a scapegoat for some misappropriation of funds, which actually was Rampart who misappropriated. But all that's going on, and Bail Organa's house is basically was the one who advised Senator Chuchi to talk with the former senator from Camino. And I suspect when the former senator from Camino entered Senator Chuchi's office and saw Omega, I suspect she suspected that Omega was a clone. That's the only person Omega reveals in the entire Senate that she's a clone, at least on screen. Probably is the only one. But that is kind of an interesting thing to know. I have a feeling that the Cameron and Center suspected. I mean, what Cameron, who worked closely with the cloners, I mean, come on, there has to be a connection there. But like, they do successfully reveal the truth of what happened to Camino, but then the Emperor comes in and he twists it. Like basically, I'm a Rampart. He was in the wrong. He's gonna be punished accordingly. Gods arrest him. Literally. Actually, it was Massamita who ordered that, but and then the Emperor in his address basically says that, and the fact that the clones will so readily followed his orders, we can't trust. But not that we can't trust him, more like we can't rely solely on them anymore, and therefore the bill that would allow for civilian conscription passes. Seriously, like the Emperor twists it. So kind of like I was suspecting, it was not going to be a happy ending, but I kind of like how, it shows the evil machinations of the Emperor. So in the final scene before the Bad Batch leave, they're talking about how they played right into the Empire's hand. The Emperor wanted them, in their estimation, to do this. Now, I suspect whether somebody revealing the truth or not, the Emperor was going to get his way no matter what. But he was able to use both of those scenarios and twist them to his own benefit. And then the most shocking reveal is that Echo is staying with Rex to fight the Empire and help the clones out. Which, this is a very sad thing for Omega, but also in some ways it's important for her to learn that sometimes some things just need to have been, you just have to do them because it's the right thing to do. It's probably going to take her an episode to process this. But I see basically both points of view. Echo has been wanting to do more to fight the Empire, while Hunter has been wanting to keep them all safe, especially Omega, safe from the Empire. And in some ways, this is probably the best way of doing it. Echo and Fives doing probably the more dangerous work, rescuing clones, helping clones who are doubting the Empire and all that to escape. Meanwhile, the Bad Batch can be on the outside, the people they call when they need additional help. I have a feeling that's what's going to be, but it was a sad ending, and even if they didn't do that, it still was going to be a sad ending. But I do appreciate that it was a sad ending because, well, we need to know that the Empire is going to twist things to its own benefit. Like, let's just take in Star Wars Andor. Even if the Aldari heist didn't happen, the Empire is going to find some way to crack down on dissents and increase sentences, and so they can increase their prison labor. The Empire was going to find a way of doing that no matter what. The Empire just conveniently took the excuses, took an act of insurgency as an excuse. The point is, the Emperor is always going to find a way to twist those things to his benefit. He's a master planner. He orchestrated the entire Clone Wars, after all, which I'm glad that they did acknowledge in this episode. So it makes sense. He's a mastermind manipulator, so he's going to manipulate things to be his favor. Of course, eventually, as we know in the original trilogy, things are not. He's eventually not going to be able to manipulate everything, and that's going to cause his downfall. His overconfidence in his ability to manipulate. But right now, nobody is able to outwit his maneuvering. Bail Organa, you can tell, is doing his best, but even still, they can't. The Empire is just a master manipulator and has so much support. It's hard for those who want to fight the Empire to do so in the political theater. Hence why we do see a rebellion form, a rebellion that's going to take armed conflict to the Empire. And another thing to note is I do appreciate that Senator Chuchi promises Omega that she'll continue to fight for the rights of the clones, because you can definitely tell Omega was saying that the clones didn't have any representation, and the closest was the Camerons, who only represented themselves. But that's probably where I want to really end this episode. It's kind of a lackluster ending on my part. It's kind of fitting for the sad and unfortunate ending of this episode that had to be that way because of its nature as a prequel. The Bad Batch couldn't succeed in stopping the creation of the Stormtroopers, but what they could do is succeed in helping solidify the early elements of rebellion against the Empire. But those are just my thoughts. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. So I have briefly talked about each episode for about 5 minutes, but what about what both of these episodes are saying as a whole? So I think I did kind of already address that subject, how these two episodes tell the story together, a little bit of my speculation at the end of my review section for the Clone Conspiracy, and then a little bit at the end of my review for Truth and Consequences. But what are these two episodes saying together, truly saying together as the sole focus of this section, if you will? What I think it's saying is, even if the Emperor is going to twist things to his own benefit, you still should stand up and fight against it. That's, I think, what is both saying. The first episode was setup, but it was good setup. It was designed to show what the stakes are. And then Truth and Consequences, dealing with the truth, but also the consequences of the truth. So the Empire knows, especially now that Senate knows, and soon the way the galaxy will know, what truly happened to Kamino. Now the only question is do people trust that what the Stormtroopers are going to be a safe replacement of the clones, that they're not going to, do atrocities? They will. But does the galaxy trust it, or do they recognize that the things are being twisted? We don't know that, but that's what it's setting up. So it does really nicely connect with what we've seen in Star Wars with the formation of the Rebel Alliance, and how you can tell people don't trust the Empire, so they rebel. Some people need more galvanization than others, but I guarantee you there's probably some rebel that we saw in one scene in the original trilogy that, if we get his story, it was this moment right here that galvanized him against the Empire, or her, or it, or they. We don't know. Could be a droid that's galvanized against the Empire. We just don't know. But that's the thing is, the truth has been revealed, but it's also been twisted. But the consequences of both the truth and the twisting now have to be dealt with. The Emperor did get what he wanted, but he should realize, and he probably does, that there's going to be new members of the Imperial Senate who are going to maybe be a little more vocal and critical of the Empire now. There are going to be plans that maybe have an uptick in insurgency now. Those are consequences he's going to have to deal with, but of course he's going to twist those to get even more, because that's how evil dictators work. They twist things. They work to undermine the rule of law and the rule of democracy for their own gain. Those throw a lower subordinate under the bus if it means they can amass more power for themselves. That's the consequences of everything that's going on. But of course, the ultimate consequence of this is the Rebel Alliance itself that's going to be forming in, probably about 15 in-galaxy years. It's going to come. The consequences of establishing an authoritarian, totalitarian empire will come to fruition. The consequences of that, the good and the bad. The good being, of course, the Rebel Alliance and movement against it that ends up destroying the Empire, and thus later on the First Order. But that's a long time away. The consequences that are good for the galaxy are in the distant future. Where the Bad Batch sees that, I don't know, but it's an interesting thought. But I would love to hear all your thoughts on these two episodes in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed my review, please be sure to give it a like, upvote, and share. Also, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. And as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you, always.